When I first saw Path to Nowhere, I was really surprised another game was being made for the tower defense genre, because honestly that genre is kinda dying. But the biggest thing I noticed was that it was in 2.5D, it had 3D models. Which to some people that's huge, as I've heard many say they don't like the chibis in Arknights. Personally, I don't agree, but I can see why some people don't like them, as they kinda got the Kingdom Hearts 1 Megafoot syndrome going on. I was interested to see how Path to Nowhere was going to carve out its own spot in the tower defense genre, so I tried it out, and it's really good. This is how you make a game that is directly competing with a different massive IP. It improves on many things that Arknights does and plays differently as well. Most importantly, this game has a sweep function, which is honestly enough to make it a 10 out of 10. Also, I'm going to heavily compare this game to Arknights because it's the biggest and only competitor to this game. With that in mind, it does a lot of good things, but I have a big worry about the game. That worry is that it's gonna die. Before I get into that, let me talk about the good things in this game, because there is a lot. The gameplay is really different than any other tower defense I've played. In most others, you need to get resources to place your units. In this, your units are already big chillin' when you start the stage. When you start, you could choose their locations and then you're good. From there, you can move them around during combat without having to worry about a redeployment time. There is a max number of repositions you could do, but I've never reached that number. The game is more fast paced. You need to react to place your units if an enemy leaks, place them in a range of a skill, or move them away from an attack. You only have 6 units, so there's less synergy and team building by comparison to Arknights. And the units don't have multiple skills, so they feel more one-dimensional in what they bring to a team. Overall, I'd say this game is less strategic than Arknights, but more reactionary. But there are some problems with the gameplay. The fact that the units are always facing right is one of them. For whatever ungodly reason, the characters fear looking in any other direction, bro. I swear to God their necks don't work. This makes me worried that many stages will start to feel similar in the future. It's a weird restriction to place on the gameplay that also hurts the stage building. And speaking of the characters, the 3D models look low quality. They straight up look like they are in 720p. The skill animations are fairly lackluster, they aren't memorable and they lack impact, and some skills feel inconsistent, like EMP's single target attack. If there are 2 enemies in the same tile, then I don't get to select who gets hit by it, which can ruin a run. And Irene's has differing effects depending on the enemy, but sometimes that shit doesn't work the way it's meant to. However, the biggest worry I have is the difficulty. The game isn't really difficult. I was able to unga bunga my way through most stages. I wasn't even playing optimally, but I was able to get halfway through chapter 7 with most of my team being under level. But that could be because my team was looking kinda like a certain aquatic animal named after cum. But there also isn't much depth to the enemies or mechanics surrounding them. One chapter had this sludge that you're meant to get rid of, but that's about it. But it was more optimal to not get rid of it and just use a different skill. In the future, I'd imagine the difficulty will increase and the mechanics will get more interesting, but as of now they aren't. But how about the story? I think it's pretty good. But real quick for a brief of this game, you are in charge of sinners as essentially the head of a prison. You have this magical BDSM power called shackles that you use to control the sinners. And from there you go around the world following the orders your superiors give you with Hela and Hakat, however the fuck you pronounce it, as your companions. The story is really easy to read and is enjoyable to go through, and it's fully voiced with great voice acting, and has some fucking god to your artwork as well. I'd say the greatest thing about this game is the artwork, and I don't mean that as an insult, that is absolute praise. This shit looks amazing. Even if I stop playing this game, I'll still keep up to date on it just to see the new characters' artwork. It's godlike. But whilst the story is enjoyable to read, it has a big problem with world building. It takes you to different parts of the city, but it never gives you a reason to give a shit about those parts. The first act is focused on Syndicate, but I never gave a damn about Syndicate. Many characters were talking about making it better, but it wasn't until halfway through the act I came to the realization that Syndicate is a place in the city. It's not an actual syndicate. Aside from the world building, the characters are really well made. At first I hated Hela. I thought, damn, that bitch is crazy. And I mean, I wasn't wrong. She is crazy. But as the story progressed, they did a good job in fleshing out her character and making her interesting. And when it comes to fleshing out characters, Path to Nowhere does something that I think many other gachas need to outright copy, as I haven't seen it all that much. It does these things called interrogations. In interrogations, you talk to the character and they tell you about their story and why they are arrested. What I like about this is the fact that you're hearing about a character's story from them. In Arknights, a character's story will be told through the profile, but that's just a write-up, so you don't get a feel for a character's personality when reading that. There are operator records, but by comparison, they feel shorter than interrogations. I think many gacha games need this, as it's a way to show a character's personality whilst giving more information on what they've done. That aside, one problem with the story is the villains. So far, they haven't been terrible, but they aren't memorable. But that problem is probably only apparent because the story is still pretty fresh, so long-term villains haven't been built up yet. Given more time, the world building and villains will get better. Although, how free-to-play friendly is the game? It's really free-to-play friendly. In a week, from just the daily and weekly missions, you only get a bit more than 2 pulls, which is similar to Arknights. And Frontline, which is essentially Annihilation, gives you 2 pulls a week. That isn't counting all the other one-time sources of hypercubes. And when you finish a mission for the first time, you get 70 hypercubes with 180 being needed for a single pull. And the pity system is the same as Arknights. 2% chance for an S tier, after 50 pulls the chance to get an S tier increases with every pull. And at 80 pulls with no S tier, you are guaranteed one. However, the main reason I think the game is free to play friendly is the fact that the low rarity units aren't dog shit. My team went Beluga, but EMP, a given unit of the lowest rarity, ended up being my MVP. In case you're wondering who's good, here's a tier list. I'll put a color above the picture corresponding to the rarity of the unit. Also, the game has an event where you finish tasks and get an S tier unit at the end of it, and they are fairly generous to their players. Right now, maintenance has been going on for 16 hours, which honestly I ain't got a damn clue as to why. This shit feels like that time Rogers DDoSed itself, but here's how they are compensating the players. Which goes to show they aren't stingy at all, and to me, being free to play friendly is one of the most important aspects of a gacha game. Now, moving on to the music, how is it in this game? Dude, it's a fucking gacha game, of course it has good music. I'd be more surprised if a gacha game released with a shitty OST. It feels like all creative talent for music in the past half century was put solely into gacha game music. All of them have good beats to watch gay porn to. This game has the industry standard for music, which means it's fucking amazing. But there is one other thing this gacha shares with many others. That's the fact that a bug exists which constantly gives you a notification for the shop, despite there not being anything new. It's pretty weird that all gacha games have got this bug. I can't figure out as to why. However, there is one big bug in the game. This could be BlueStacks being ass, as it constantly is, but if you click in the same spot more than once, all clicks after the first one will not be registered at all. So if you use on-screen controls and an emulator to pause or speed up time, they will only work once and then you need to click somewhere else for them to work again. Also, the game crashed whenever I went into the survey, but that's probably a BlueStacks thing. The only other noticeable bug I found was that sometimes the text was too long and got cut off, so you needed to go into the log to read the rest of it. And that's basically all I have to say about the game. I think it's really good. The gameplay is different from Arknights and it improves where Arknights has shortcomings, like the readability of the story. There are some areas that need improvement and will probably get improvement with time, but I don't know if the game has time. I don't know if it'll survive because I hear nothing about this game. The subreddit doesn't have many people on it. Looking at Google Trends, it doesn't even have a huge spike for its release, and Nikkei has already overshadowed it. Keep in mind, this is the honeymoon period, so traffic for the game should be at its highest. Of course, this data isn't exactly ironclad, so however much you'd wish to value it depends on the person. Now, I don't mean to say the game will die, but I can't say it's not looking to be the most popular, so I can't in good faith recommend the game without talking about that. Now, I'm not saying to stay away from the game. I recommend trying it out because it's really good. And games dying can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If many players think a game will die, then they'll leave, causing it to die. So I fully recommend playing this game because it deserves to be more popular than it currently is. The game is an 8 out of 10 that more people should know about. It has some drawbacks, but I have confidence those will be fixed with time. I just worry this game doesn't have that much time.